Welcome, everyone, to this limited podcast series. This is Katie MacMullin.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm Marin Phoenix. And we've got a fabulous interview podcast series lined up for you today. We are going to learn a little bit about Katie, about biomagnetism, and all of these incredible modalities that she uses, and some good tips that you can use right now. So stay tuned through the whole thing. And gonna get started?
Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
I'm in the hot seat today. So
He is, yes. So today we're starting, as Katie mentioned, we're starting with getting to know Katie, getting to know her practice, and a little bit about what she does. So welcome, Katie.
thank you. Yes, I guess I can introduce myself. My name's a body and mind resiliency coach using techniques like energy medicine yoga, Reiki healing, and biomagnetism therapy. I bring in some sound tools as well. I don't want to spoil all the little details, but I love this work so deeply. I suppose I could also be considered a bit of an energy or like a body detective in a way. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Other fun things to know, I'm born and raised from Concord, New Hampshire. So a real New England gal. I love spending time outside. I'm obsessed with dark chocolate and my dogs. So just a few tidbits to get us started.
Yeah, amazing. So tell us a little more. So you just kind of gave this beautiful little intro. Thank you for making that such a nice little package there. What drew you to this work? Like, what is your journey? How did you get into biomagnetism, to this healing work? What brought you into this?
You know, it's funny. I almost every time I tell this story, I think I start at a different place. So I think today I'll first just say, as a little girl, I was always very imaginative, always loved like creating different worlds and drawing them or just acting them out. And so I really have always felt something like beyond myself, like some sort of connection that's just, it's unseen, but it's so felt. And so I'll fast forward a little bit to my first year of college. No, actually, that's a little bit too far. I have to go 6 months before that, my senior year of high school. I was a ski racer. So downhill ski racing, going super fast, making beautiful turns. I skied before I could walk. So skiing was something really important to my family. And yeah, pretty cool stuff. And so it was towards the end of that season, I took a pretty bad crash. Like I fell, ski caught, some ice, and I ended up flipping over. And that was my first really big concussion. The first of like 8 or 10. We're not really sure at this point. So that was the first. And then a couple weeks later, I went snowboarding, hit my head again because I'd never been snowboarding. It's funny, of all the years and fell down again and just sort of re-injured. And then 6 months later, I started college and joined the women's rugby team. My parents played rugby, and it was a whole, for me, like a, honoring of them, or maybe I'll try this out and see if I like it, if it fits me, because they always just spoke really highly of the group of people that rugby attracts. And so you can imagine rugby, I mean, that is football, like without helmets, essentially. And so I wasn't super big. I was strong, but I'm relatively small. I'm like medium height and everything. And I was just getting like crushed out there, like being tackled by all of these young women who are quite a bit larger, just like more built out than I was. There was one really bad tackle where I blacked out after. I'm not even exactly sure what happened, but we didn't have any subs that game, so I actually had to stay in and play. And so even though I'd had concussions like a few months prior to this, there's really not a lot of talk about traumatic brain injuries and concussions and how long it actually takes someone to heal from. I mean, it's a really serious bruise essentially to your skull and to your brain. We can get them all the time, and small ones, but these are big hits. So essentially what happened, I stayed in school for about a week, maybe 10 days. heavy on the computer, heavy reading, right? As a freshman in college, it was so much writing, reading. I had to attend like movie screenings that week, and I was getting super nauseous. Something was not right. I played in a game the following weekend, and that's when I totally lost it. Underneath the stadium lights, it was an evening game. My family had come down, and I was on the field, and I was like, I don't even know who I am. Like, things were getting really disoriented, even though I wasn't even near the play. And I took a knee. I was like, what can I do right now? Because I'm so unwell, but I didn't want to just walk off the field. Big team player over here. But I took a knee, and everyone was like, what the heck? I'm totally not near the ball. This is all a bit blurry at this point, but a trainer came over, did the concussion test and everything. And they were like, why are you standing? Like, how are you doing this? Anyway, within a couple days, I came down with mononucleosis and I don't know, something else. I'm forgetting now, but I basically got really, really sick, seemingly out of like nowhere. So this was fevers. I was sleeping a lot. I just like was so unwell that I wanted to stay in school. So my parents left me there for a bit, blah, blah, blah. So that sucked. I ended up being pulled out of school. I was in a lot of pain. I was really confused. And I honestly don't recall a lot of the next 2 months. My mother was like really freaked out because I was sleeping for like 20 hours a day between the head trauma and then everything that brings up. So this is really kind of where the insertion point comes into where we're headed with this story is when your body suffers such a trauma. My story, I was very much removed from my physical body. And so it left my human, shell essentially so vulnerable to anything else that wanted to come up, things that I had been exposed to over my whole life. One of my teachers talks about our cup getting really full over our life, and things will kind of crawl and hide away until they see their moment to come out. For me, that was Lyme disease and everything else encompassing Lyme disease. So Bartonella, Babesia, Anaplasma. There's just a whole host, literally, of these autoimmune infections. So I'll fast forward a little bit. I stayed out of school for like a year and took some classes on the side because I have a lot of masculine, like strong, young energy, which I love talking about. A lot of like the doing, being, and how frustrating is that to be like a young adult, like in your late teens, and not be able to be where you want to be. I mean, really at any point in life, but that was a really fiery time. So I started working with all these different neurologists. Somehow that all led to Pilates because getting back into movement can be really challenging for folks with TBIs. So start slow. It further led me down the path of yoga. I met with nutritionists, and this was like a years-long process of stuff. I ended up working with a naturopath once we realized that like there was the Lyme underneath all of these weird things that were happening after my concussions, and I'm still recovering from those as well. And basically what happened, like I was on a lot of supplements, I was taking antibiotics for all these different things going on after having done some blood tests and also just guessing, because a lot of the times maybe we're getting better, but at least several years ago when I was going through all of this, the tests really weren't great. So I was on antibiotics, even though my Lyme tests were technically negative and all these things. And just thank God for my mom. I love you, Mom, if you're listening to this. And thank you for being my champion, because if we can't be our own champion when we're going through healing, we need an advocate. For me, that was my mom. And she wouldn't stop reading books, reaching out to doctors, just anybody who might be able to give us more answers about why I wasn't sort of getting back to, which is not my favorite thing, but like getting back to this, very lively, vibrant version of Katie that she knew, her whole life. And, a lot of those things I worked with nutritionists. I was getting craniosacral therapy, which was beautiful. The supplements, at one point I was even giving myself injections of like B12. All these things like were really helpful. I had a great team, and I still was like, something's missing. I'm still just not getting to where I want to be mentally, physically, whatever, all of it. And anyway, I remember getting pretty beat down with it all. I started to get really anxious and really even depressed at times, which was so against my nature, like so far against my character. And I was really freaked out, and I could do a whole episode on that. But to keep it moving here, my mom ended up finding biomagnetism through a friend. Actually, she had gotten this information on my first concussion in high school.
Oh my
It's been like
goodness.
4 or 5 years since we'd had the information. I think 4 years. And she forgot about it. Isn't that funny how things happen when the timing has to be right? And so she remembered that we had this contact. And anyways, so then I started Reiki. It was the first time that I ever had Reiki. I had to do Reiki first to basically see if my body's energy magnets, because they're pretty powerful, really beautiful. And so I started every other week. I was doing Reiki, receiving Reiki, and then I was receiving biomagnetism. From the first session, I was like, yep, this is what I need. And by the
Wow.
third session, I was like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life once I'm healed. So that was, I think it was like 7 years ago now, 7 or 8. I'm losing track, but
Wow.
that's sort of the foundation and the build up. And I mean, there's so much frustration and little things in between, but that's how biomagnetism came into my life.
It's almost like you had to go through a spiritual, physical, emotional, mental crisis to find your calling in a way.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people can probably relate to that pushing, trying to do whatever it is that you do in life at the highest level and kind of ignoring those signs from your body of like, it's time to slow down, because we live in a fast-paced society where to slow down feels like falling behind. It feels like falling short. So I think a lot of people can relate to that pushing past your boundaries, pushing past that place where your body is saying, we need to heal, we need to slow down. So what now? It's almost like if you knew then what you know now, what would you tell people who are in that right now? They're in that place right now in their life where they're either pushing their body past their limits, or they have already pushed and they're in this place of needing to heal at this point.
Yeah, gosh. It's funny you bring that up actually, because throughout my whole experience, my mom kept saying, this is a sign that you need to slow down. So she was so right. And I've received that message many times since then. But you know what? If you're listening to this, maybe that's exactly the message that you need. It's really simple, but it's time to slow down. And like to have a team, like seriously having a team, your family and your friends count, your doctor counts, your, therapist counts, and all the other things, your teachers, your manager, like people at work, like who's on your team, who feels like they're going to support you. I think that's pretty important. With things like, I guess just to talk concussions a little bit, like make sure you see a neurologist. That's important. There's so much that can go wrong. And the technology we have in like conventional medicine, for a lot of things can be very useful, to make sure that there's nothing going on underneath the surface. So I think it's like get help.
Yeah.
Essentially. And that's broad because there's so many ways that you can access that. But starting in like who's in your corner and include yourself in that.
Yeah. I just want to repeat what you just said. You don't have to do this alone. I think that's really, especially for a lot of the people that I'm sure you see, a lot of the people that I work with, we're highly motivated, successful, people who want to show up with the full vigor of life. And to truly take in that message at whatever level that looks like you named such a beautiful support group, also spiritual support, also, just support from Mother Earth. There's so many different places where we can draw support, and just remembering that we're not meant to do it alone. Like to be our full and best self, it's okay. okay to surrender to that assistance and help. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. One of the things I heard you say is you needed to do Reiki first to see if your body or system was ready to do the biomagnetism. So when you're working with people, because you have all these modalities as part of your toolkit, how do you know that somebody, like if someone's coming to you for the first time, how do you know that they're ready for biomagnetism? What do you do with that? What's that process like for you?
Great question. There's a couple things there. One, if you are showing up at my door or in my inbox, you're ready. You're ready for something. You're already showing up. So that's the first step. The first step is to show up. And the second step, well, I actually start with just talking. I love just talking to people. And from there, there's almost this unspoken, oh gosh, I could call it language maybe, that's taken like, it's come very natural. I think it comes natural to all of us. But I've really, for me, have been focused and intentionally aware of this like unspoken sort of energy language, which absolutely comes to us through tone of voice. Are you able to make eye contact, body language, the words that you're using to describe your situation? These are all first line, like first level indicators, I think of, and not even first level, we can go deep with that stuff. Talking is powerful. Those are first indicators to me of where you're at. What do you need? And then from there, I have like some other tools where I can energy test or use muscle testing to see what your body wants today. What does your energy want? At this point, I'm usually pretty clear on what needs to happen first. I find that the Reiki energy work and the biomagnetism work really well together. Great analogy is pepper and turmeric are like BFFs in cooking. So turmeric is great for inflammation and all that. But if you put a little bit of pepper, it doesn't take much. The curcumin in pepper actually helps your body to absorb better the turmeric for better anti-inflammatory properties.
Okay, so for all of you out there who love turmeric milk and possibly make it at home, but leave out the black pepper like me and wonder, why do I have pepper in? Now we
the pepper, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for everything. And so in that same way, really, is how I see the Reiki energy work. And biomagnetism having this kind of beautiful marriage, like speaking to each other. And it just helps the body and the energy on the physical and the more subtle levels to soften and open and respond to what's needed in that moment.
That's beautiful. And I will speak as from personal experience of experiencing Katie's work. When she did the magnets first on me, and I ended up I felt so cold. Like suddenly I felt like, oh my gosh, my body is like cooling down. And then I had my eyes closed, but I could suddenly feel this stream of warmth coming into my body. And that was when you were doing Reiki, because it was very pointed places where she was doing that focused work. So it was like such a beautiful complementary, just pure experience. That warm stream complemented with the cooled experience of the magnets of my body. So yeah, I can absolutely see how they work so beautifully together. And
yeah,
it's
complement funny too. I just want to comment on that. Not everyone feels the coldness of the magnets.
You don't have to go into a deep freeze
No,
to
you-
experience healing.
You
That's
don't.
just me. No.
And we have blankets and, it's very comfortable, but it really is so fascinating to hear what different people say. I thought this was you, but I think it was actually a different client who was like, oh, these magnets feel cold. And then when I so I have different protocols to either help kind of clear things and detox the body, and then also things that nourish and support and strengthen our systems that need that.
The helper magnets.
The helper magnets. Was this you?
Yeah.
And then you were like, oh, now this magnet feels friendly.
Yeah. All of a sudden, she was doing the magnets. And then all of a sudden there was these warmer magnets that she placed on. And you could actually, I think a lot of people, let me ask you that. That's a really good question. Do people do they have an experience of what's happening, or does it just kind of Are they just kind of laying there? Like, what is the experience of a person receiving biomagnetism and this work from you?
Yeah, such a good question. I'll just back it up a little bit to say, so I use muscle testing and energy testing to identify where the pairs of magnets, I place them in pairs on the body. It depends how many a person needs, like what's going on in that moment. So we're placing usually quite a few. It just depends. And everyone's experience is so different. I mean, there are similarities for sure. I've had other folks say that the magnets are cold. Some people just feel it in their body. They're like, why am I tingling all of a sudden? Or I had this one woman recently who she's a massage therapist. So she uses this language where she went into a still point. As soon I placed one magnet on her liver just to get things moving and to warm it up. And she was like, oh my gosh, I just went into a still point, which I believe, feel free to comment on our show if you guys know exactly or have better terms for this. But I'm pretty sure a still point is when your body like fully relaxes. It's like when you find, when you find like that point where you just completely, surrender, soften. I love the word surrender.
Yeah.
Because it's just like falling into that trust and that faith that like, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. And this is exactly what I'm supposed to be receiving right now. So that was really, really neat.
It's almost like a massage inside.
Yes, that's what I say. That's how I describe it. I'm like, it's a kind of an energy massage. Your organs love it. So on a physical level, like the magnets are actually opening up the channels in the body to send more blood, so more oxygen to wherever they're placed. So that's why it can be really supportive. And then from there, your body just knows what to do. It's actually to come back to almost like the turmeric and the pepper analogy, where you don't have to tell your body that those two things work together. You're not like, hey, I'm eating turmeric right now, make sure you absorb all the good stuff so I can feel better. It's the same thing with the magnets and with the energy work. It's about the environment that's provided to your mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical systems, that they know exactly what to do with the energy once it's there.
Your body wants to be in alignment.
Correct.
And when we go through experiences like the concussions, or we have something that's a disturbance of whatever kinds truly are, like I always say, our bodies are our best friends, right? And our bodies truly want to be clear. They want to be in alignment with their original blueprint, like that pure, healthy, original blueprint. And so they will, with that help, do whatever they need to do naturally to clear and move.
It's a brilliant design, isn't it?
It's amazing.
It's like we were made to do all of these things, like to breathe, to digest, without having to direct the show. And how much pressure does that take off of us? We just get to live and enjoy. And I think this feels like a good time to add, any work that you're doing, any kind of detoxing or healing or nourishing your body, the point is like not to be fully clear. Like we actually need a lot of these things. And our body does a beautiful job at managing a pretty full cup of stuff. Like we have bacteria, we have viruses, we have parasites, we have fungus all inside of us all the time. It gets sticky actually in when we don't process our emotions. That's kind of what we have found with my colleagues and in my studies is, as they say in Ayurveda, very, very ancient traditional practice of wisdom that comes to us from India, that there's no disease without an emotional root. Or there's no physical manifestation of disease without an emotional root. So, and I think that's why our work too is so complementary. There's a lot we can do with magnets and energy work to help identify emotions that you're unaware of, or that you've taken on from other people, because we're able to identify that and talk about it. And then there's also the deeper patterns, deeper patternings and programs in our brains that you work a lot with. And you know what? We need it all. We need both.
Yeah, we'll talk next week, or next episode, we'll talk a little bit more about what I do, but Katie's kind of bringing that in. I'm a transformational coach and I work with people in the deep subconscious level. So I work a lot with emotions and beliefs and getting deeper into that. And it is such a beautiful pairing, such a beautiful marriage between our modalities with the body work and having that being able to adjust and clear the flow physically and also at the emotional and mental level. So that's, yeah, it's gorgeous.
It is.
One thing that I would love to come back to, I heard you use the term muscle testing. That might be something that people are unfamiliar with or curious about. What the heck is muscle testing?
Oh boy. Okay. I'm not the spokesperson for muscle testing, but I can absolutely tell you how I use it and how I learned it a little bit. It's a pretty big umbrella. So muscle testing falls under the umbrella of kinesiology, which is, to my knowledge, like the study of how muscles sort of communicate, how neurons, in your muscles work together. So I can actually move my hands and, move my eyes and move my mouth to talk. So in muscle testing, we are essentially tapping into the way that your body physically responds before you consciously are aware of what's going on.
So it's basically tapping into your intuition in a way. Is
In
that
a sense? So I use them
or
a
like
bit
your higher
interchangeably.
wisdom?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
It's like, okay, so you're driving down the highway, right? And all of a sudden, a deer jumps out in front of you. We react immediately, to swerve or whatever. And that's just, it feels almost instinctual. But there was actually, like, your eyes probably registered it and your muscles moved to respond in that sort of, I'm putting this in quotes, like an instinctual way. But really it's like your muscles just react to your environment so much faster than your conscious mind does. So the body responds to muscle testing. I will oftentimes be at a person's feet, and what I'm looking for is actually a discrepancy in leg length when I ask a question. So what happens when I ask a question, usually it's in my head, does Marin need a magnet on her liver? Yes or no? Show me a yes or a no. Your body will respond with a leg contraction, like the muscles contract when it's true for you. So when the answer is yes, this is for most people. This is nuanced, okay? So I'm not like teaching kinesiology. I'm telling you kind of what happens when I do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. But the leg will actually contract to say, yes, like you got it right. You're onto something here. And if nothing happens, so if the feet stay even, you're laying down, the feet stay even, then that's just a no. Like, nope, don't need it.
Like
There's
response.
no response.
Okay.
So it's a bit of how it works.
And is that the same for every person?
So this is part of the nuance. Yes and no. You get to actually set an intent about how you want the body to respond to you.
Oh, wow.
So for me, when I'm muscle testing feet, my intention, because it's comfortable for me, is to have the person that I'm asking questions on behalf of, that their left leg contracts. But for a lot of other people I know, the right leg will contract. I also have other ways and that I muscle test or energy test. I can also use my own body. I will use my hand a lot of the time. My fingers, I wiggle them to get a yes or a no. And it's very similar to like dowsing and penduluming. Because at the heart of it, that's pretty much, we're just tapping into energy. So we start, it's like the body is a pathway. The physical is like one pathway to get answers about emotional, vibrational, spiritual, mental. Hopefully that helped.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's always fascinating to me to have these conversations with people who do different modalities. Speaking of which, I'm so curious about so when people come to work with you, what do people come to you for? What kind of results do they have? Right? I mean, I feel like this is something that everyone would be curious about.
Absolutely. Gosh, people have come to me with a lot of different things. I think my favorite things to work with are digestion, are concussions, and emotions.
What do you mean by emotions?
It's funny because it's not something people, I guess, necessarily come
I have
aware
emotions.
of. Yeah. The emotions sort of come out of everything else. But one way to describe it is like, I feel off, or I'm getting really mad all the time and I don't know why, because I didn't used to. I also, in the same vein, really, this might sound kind of funny to say it this way, but I really do love seeing people when they're going through or just went through big life transitions.
Yeah.
Because any big life transition, so I think of you're moving, you just went through a breakup or something really happy too, right? Just a change in relationships, romantic, familial, friendships can also be a really big loss too.
Yeah.
So anyone that you would almost like consider family, and even not, sometimes I've had people with like acquaintances that, have just passed away. Death is a big one. Loss, anything that feels like a huge loss. It doesn't have to be actual death.
Yeah.
Divorce. So these are big, really big changes. Going away to school. Yeah, really, really major changes that are going on. That's a lot of emotions that are dancing, and sometimes they get stuck. So one question I really enjoy asking people, even when I just meet them for the first time, and they're telling me about something going on, like, oh, my right knee has been killing me for 3 months and it just came out of nowhere. Ooh, that's a great phrase. If you find yourself saying, this came out of nowhere, it didn't.
Ooh.
It didn't. Call me, email me, let's talk about it, because what the heck was going on in your life 3 to 9 months before that? And maybe it was even before that, but the body is communicating and things do not just come out of nowhere. They just don't. I'm personally starting to lean more into the camp that there's not even like coincidences. I had a friend last year who he twisted his knee on a hike. He's in good shape, everything, strong guy. Twisted his knee and it like would not heal for like months. And so some questions about that. What are you not moving forward on in life? Like, what are you sort of holding on to? What are you attached to? And it's physical, so it still took time to heal. But some people would see that and say, oh yeah, well, you put your foot on that rock, so you twisted the knee.
Yeah.
But would that have happened if we were already weak in that area? Because like emotions, and there are different patterns in the body, which you and I love talking about. Like the body has its own map for where things get held. So if we're starting to weaken on like a subtle level, that's when, this is part of like the Ayurvedic too, the how disease actually manifests physically. It starts energetically or emotionally, and we're like sort of creating patterns in the body of like, if you're having leg or maybe back problems, like, is there something you're not moving forward on, or are you not able to stand up somehow for yourself or for someone else? And that's starting actually to physically manifest as like cowering in. Are you fearful? So there's just like a lot of different questions.
Another way to think about that is it's not the trigger. The trigger is not what's going on. It's kind of like when somebody, you've been going through a lot with your day and you're just getting a little more agitated, a little more tense, but you're just trying to keep it together and you're moving through your day, and then somebody, it could be a stranger, says, have a great day, or how are you doing? And you just like, and you just blow up at them. And it's like, or it could be that somebody cuts you off in traffic, or, your boss like says, well, I'm going to, this isn't what I was looking for, whatever it is. And you kind of blow up, or, suddenly it all comes to a head. It's like the trigger is not what's going on. The trigger is just that point of awareness where you suddenly are, it's very clear, like when you had that moment of taking a knee, like it is so clear that whatever has led up to this point, I need to pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah. So well said.
What is your greatest hope for people coming to you, and for people out there? Like, what is your like greatest hope for the world, I suppose?
Marin hitting me with the hard questions today. My greatest hope. So it's funny, actually, just this past summer, so a few months ago, someone asked me what I thought the greatest evil in the world is. Took me a minute, but essentially I ended up coming up with, I think it's our relationship to ourselves. Because if we do not individually have inner peace, then we act in ways that are not aligned and inappropriate and ultimately harmful to others and to the globe. And then when you get people that are all misaligned, but somehow misaligned in a coherent way in their misalignment, we get these, I think, larger issues, things like war and corruption and et cetera, et
Or
cetera.
even in the community, like local community level.
Correct.
Yeah.
So my greatest hope for people in doing this work and even just listening to this, having these conversations, is that you find more peace within yourself, because it spreads and it ripples and it matters. So
And one, as we wrap this up, what is one thing that somebody who's watching this and listening to this, what is one thing that they can do right now to come into greater rapport, greater alignment with their own sense of peace inside?
when you have a question, especially one that you keep asking yourself and you keep asking other people, find a moment to have a nice tall spine, close your eyes, and ask your question. Take a breath and see what comes up. Let your shoulders melt away from your ears. Ask it again. Or if it's a mantra that you need to hear, say it again. Say it out loud. Say it in your head. I'm sorry. I forgive you. Thank you. I love you. That's a great mantra to use at any time with your eyes closed. But truly, like if we find ourselves, so I just gave kind of two different tools there, really. One, if you're finding that you're asking a question of other people, that's something that's, especially when it's personal to you, you have the answer. I promise you have the answer inside of you. You know what's right. So that's been coming up a lot lately with friends who are like, should I break up with him? What should I have for dinner? In the work that I do, I don't know. I'm asking your body and I'm energy testing, and we are discovering that together. And then on the other side of that, when maybe there's no question, but there's just like, you need some nourishment, or things feel a little broken, coming back to those 4 phrases, which is a traditional Hawaiian. It goes, I'm sorry, I forgive you, thank you, I love you. You can say it to yourself. You can say it as a prayer to anyone you feel needs it. You can say it to your cells. It's really powerful. So yeah, encourage people to try that.
For those of you, since you're bringing up that, it is a very powerful mantra or prayer. I don't think I'm alone in this. I have kind of worst case scenario mind a lot of times, driving down the highway, like, oh my God, what if this happens? Or a deer jumps out in front of me, or whatever it is. Thinking about all the horrible things that could happen in any given moment. When those come up and your anxiety starts to flare, using that mantra just immediately calms the nervous system and really helps to bring you back center and into alignment. And it's such a beautiful practice. So thank you for sharing that.
I feel more aligned right now, like grounded, having just said it once.
I know.
So yeah,
Right.
this has been so beautiful, Marin. Thank you.
So wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Katie, for answering all these questions, for sharing yourself here on this episode. And I can't wait to do more.
I know. We have so much to talk about. So I hope everybody found a piece of yourself in our conversation, something that you can take with you. If you have questions, we'd love questions.
We love questions.
Most of the time I answer questions with a question, but today there were definitely some stories to be told. So please reach out if you have questions for us. And I have some questions for Marin for our next episode. So stay excited, stay tuned, get ready. There's so many more good conversations coming your way. Thank you so much for being here.